Joe Biden is the 46th President of the United States. Ever since George Washington was inaugurated in 1789, there's truly been a diverse and unique range of presidents to hold the top position in the country. Some are easier to remember than others, while some presidencies can never be forgotten, either for positive or for negative reasons, depending on your viewpoint. But what did the presidents do before they became president? While most of us know that Ronald Reagan was an actor and Donald Trump was a property tycoon, what other presidents actually did before moving into the White House might surprise you. From war heroes to entrepreneurs and peanut farmers, it's quite an eclectic mix of backgrounds making up the list of presidents. Let's get the ball rolling from where it all began. America's first president, George Washington. Washington learned responsibility from an early age. His father died when he was 11, and young George and his brothers were left to look after the family farm. Although this meant that his schooling came to an abrupt end, his smarts were quickly identified, and he became the county surveyor at just 17 years old. Washington continued to farm the land after he married, experimenting with various farming techniques. However, it was when he joined the military that his leadership qualities became clear, and he quickly worked his way through the ranks, eventually leading the Continental Army to victory in the American Revolution. Washington wasn't the only president with an impressive military career behind him. This has been a common theme throughout his presidencies. Ulysses S. Grant was America's 18th president. Grant was a gifted horse rider, which earned him a place in the Army's elite cavalry division. It was from here that Grant really made his mark, and in 1861, he joined the Union Army to fight Confederate forces in the Civil War. Grant led the Union to several decisive victories, including Vicksburg and Chattanooga, eventually resulting in the Union winning the war. He was then appointed General of the Army before becoming president in 1868. Dwight Eisenhower was another president who entered the Oval Office with a mighty reputation from his military career. Eisenhower was instrumental in leading the Allied forces to key victories in World War II, including the critical North African and D-Day offensives. Much of his success was due to a rare combination of military savvy and people skills. Eisenhower was able to motivate and inspire so well that his presidential campaign slogan was the catchy, "I like Ike." It worked. People did like Ike. John Kennedy was one of America's most famous and admired presidents. He too proved himself more than worthy in battle. Kennedy served in World War II in the U.S. Navy. In 1943, a Japanese warship sank and destroyed a boat Kennedy was commanding. He and his surviving crew swam several miles to safety. This was made all the more remarkable as Kennedy saved one man by pulling the man along by the life jacket strapped with his teeth. Yeah, his teeth. Such acts are most definitely future president material. Others had accumulated a fair portion of life experience before they became president. Theodore, or Teddy, Roosevelt had already traveled throughout much of Europe before he was 20. His father was a philanthropic businessman who often took his family overseas, and Roosevelt lived with a German family for 5 months. Teddy was later dealt a cruel hand when he lost his daughter, mother, and wife to illness, all in the space of 1 week. Shattered, he turned to the Dakota Badlands, relishing the escape offered by the wild frontier. Roosevelt spent years out west, where he hunted, raised livestock, and even hunted down outlaws as a frontier sheriff. Similarly, Harry Truman became the president after years of toughing it out, trying to make a living. Truman was president when Japan surrendered, bringing an end to World War II. However, he had to fight hard before he came into office. His family struggled to make ends meet, and Truman jumped from job to job before finally finding his calling in the military. At various stages, he worked in a mailroom, at a bank, in railroad construction, and even tried his hand at a mining venture. It wasn't until he joined the Army in World War I and discovered that he was a natural leader that Truman's prospects started to look a little bit brighter. Many U.S. presidents had either studied, taught, or were practicing law before they were sworn in. Thomas Jefferson, Barack Obama, Richard Nixon, Gerald Ford, Bill Clinton, and Joe Biden were all involved in law before they moved into politics. Jefferson was an outstanding scholar and served as a lawyer in Virginia, mainly assisting planters with land claims and titles. Nixon worked briefly in California as a lawyer before World War II broke out. He enlisted in the Navy, where he was soon promoted to lieutenant commander. At the end of the war, Nixon began his career in politics and was elected to the House of Representatives in 1946. Gerald Ford was the American president from 1974 to 1977. He had his own practice in the early 1940s before America was drawn into World War II. After the war, Ford continued to practice as a lawyer, although the war had opened his eyes to the affairs of the world, and he began working towards a career in politics. Bill Clinton pretty much jumped from academia straight into politics. After graduating from Yale University Law School in 1973, he taught law at the University of Arkansas School of Law until 1976. Clinton was hell-bent on making his name in politics, though, and in 1978 became the governor of Arkansas at just 38 years old, the youngest governor in the country at the time. After teaching constitutional law in Illinois, Obama also practiced as a lawyer full-time, before sitting on a number of boards focused on upholding citizens' civil and legal rights. Perhaps the most well-rounded individual to enter office was Abraham Lincoln. By the time he became president in 1861, Lincoln had accumulated a wealth of life experience in his 52 years of life. Like many other presidents, he came from a poor background and learned the value of grinding away from an early age. Lincoln taught himself to read and write while slaving away on his family's farm until he was 17. He landed a job on a ferry boat, and he loved the freedom of life on the river. This prompted him to build his own flatboat, and he started trading farm produce on his boat up and down the Mississippi River. He sold his boat business, bought his own house, and worked in local towns as a surveyor, postmaster, and storekeeper. Lincoln volunteered to help fight in the Black Hawk War in the early 1830s, where he was promptly elected to the rank of captain. He then set about setting up his own law practice, earning the nickname Honest Abe. Other presidents came into office with humble backgrounds, having worked hard in ordinary-paying jobs. Lyndon Johnson was president in the tumultuous years from 1963 to 1969, as Vietnam and civil rights movements carved huge divisions in American society. Johnson had worked odd jobs to pay the rent, operating elevators and slogging it out on a road crew. Desperate for a steadier income, he completed a teaching degree and was posted to a small school on the Texas/Mexican border. The student's lack of English and his lack of Spanish did not faze the future president. He just got on with it. Johnson's superiors were blown away by his ability to motivate and encourage his young learners about the importance of education, a belief that was reinforced throughout his term in the office. After graduating from Navy College in 1946, Jimmy Carter served his time in the Navy before his father passed away in 1953. Carter's family ran a peanut farm in rural Georgia, and the future 39th president dutifully resigned from the Navy and went back to help out on the farm. Perhaps the two presidents with the most well-known backgrounds before the White House are Ronald Reagan and Donald Trump. Trump amassed a small fortune in developing and selling New York hotels and apartment complexes. He learned a lot from his trade from his father, Fred, who was himself a highly successful developer. It's hard to agree on an exact number, but when Trump was sworn in as president, he was estimated to be worth at least $4 billion. Reagan was a sporty teenager, and he made his way into sports broadcasting before being screen tested for movie roles. Although he never hit the giddy heights of other male actors at the time, like Humphrey Bogart, Reagan was able to forge a lengthy screen career, making 53 movies. These are just some of the backstories of America's long run of presidents. Some of the presidents went smoothly, some ended tragically, while others were either inconsequential or flooded with controversy. As for after they left the White House, many presidents shunned the limelight and they retired quietly. Others pursued business interests or, more recently, lucrative gigs on the speaking circuit. Life goes on, though, no matter what they did before or after in their time of office. For many, being president seems to have just been another chapter in their lives.